I took the job at Spin Cycle because I was 3 months behind on rent and sleeping on my friend's couch. My name is Maya Chen. I'm 24 years old. 2 months ago, I lost my graphic design job when the startup I worked for went under without warning. Just a Friday afternoon email telling us not to come back Monday. My landlord was sympathetic for exactly 30 days, then the eviction notice appeared on my door. I'd been crashing with my college roommate ever since, folding myself onto her sectional every night, watching my savings account drain to nothing while I sent out resumes that vanished into the void. So when I saw the listing for overnight attendant at a 24-hour laundromat, $18 an hour, immediate start, no experience necessary. I didn't ask why the pay was so good. I didn't question why they were hiring so urgently. I just needed the money. Spin Cycle sits in a forgotten corner of Newark, New Jersey, wedged between a pawn shop that's been closed for years and a diner with plywood nailed over its windows. The kind of neighborhood where streetlights flicker and die without anyone bothering to replace them. Where the sidewalks are more cracked than concrete, weeds pushing through in defiant patches. I arrived for my first shift at 9:45 p.m. on a Wednesday in late October. The building looked worse in person than it had in the grainy photo on the job listing. A single-story rectangle of beige brick, its paint peeling in long strips like sunburned skin. A neon sign buzzed above the door. Spin Cycle 24 hours, though the 24 flickered intermittently, sometimes reading just 4 hours, which felt ominously prophetic. Inside, fluorescent lights cast everything in sickly yellow. 40 washing machines lined the walls in neat rows, their round glass doors like blank eyes. 20 dryers hummed along the back. The air was thick with competing smells: industrial detergent, fabric softener, mildew from the perpetually damp corners, and underneath it all, something else. Something metallic and old, like pennies left in water too long. The previous night attendant was waiting behind the counter. Her name tag read Denise, and she looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Mid-30s maybe, with hollow eyes and the kind of stillness that comes from witnessing things you can't explain but can't forget. "You're the new girl," she said, not a question. She was already gathering her things: a battered purse, a jacket with a broken zipper, keys that jangled as she shoved them in her pocket with shaking hands. "Maya," I offered, extending my hand. She looked at it like I'd offered her a live snake. "Right. Okay, listen carefully." Denise pulled a laminated sheet from beside the register and placed it in front of me with the solemnity of someone presenting evidence in a murder trial. "These are the rules. Read them, memorize them, follow them exactly. No exceptions, no improvisation, no thinking you know better." I looked down at the sheet. It was titled Night Shift Protocol in bold letters, followed by a numbered list in different fonts and handwriting styles, as if multiple people had added to it over time. 1. Never acknowledge the woman in the red coat. She is not a customer. She is not human. Pretend you cannot see her. 2. If a machine starts on its own, let it finish. Do not open it. Do not look inside. 3. The dryers in row 3 are broken. Do not let anyone use them under any circumstances. 4. If all the washers stop at once, lock yourself in the back office immediately. Wait exactly 7 minutes. 5. Do not accept tips from customers who don't cast shadows. 6. Do not interfere with customers approaching row 3. It is not your responsibility. 7. If you hear children laughing, ignore it. There are no children here. 8. The security camera in the southwest corner is always recording. Never watch the footage. 9. At 3:13 a.m., face away from the machines. Do not turn around until 3:20 a.m. 10. If someone asks you to help them find their lost laundry, tell them the lost and found is closed. Do not go looking. I read through the list twice, then looked up at Denise with what I hoped was an appropriately skeptical but polite expression. Is this... Are you serious? Is this some kind of hazing thing for new employees? Denise's face remained completely expressionless. I've worked here for 4 months. The person before me lasted 6 weeks. The one before him made it 3 days. She picked up her purse, slinging it over her shoulder. I'm not coming back after tonight. I don't care if they fire me. I don't care if I never get another paycheck. I'm done. Wait. What? Why? What happens if... Follow the rules exactly, Maya. Exactly. She was already moving toward the door, walking quickly, almost running. Don't try to rationalize them. Don't try to test them. Don't try to be brave or clever. Just follow them. She pushed through the door, and I heard her footsteps rapid on the pavement outside. Through the grimy window, I watched her get into a beat-up Honda and drive away fast enough that her tires squealed. She didn't look back once. I stood behind the counter, alone in the laundromat, looking at the laminated rules sheet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A dryer tumbled somewhere in the back, its contents making a rhythmic thump, thump, thump that sounded almost like footsteps. Okay, I said aloud to the empty room. Weird job, weird rules, but it's $18 an hour. I can handle weird. The lights flickered once, as if in response. I laughed nervously, the sound echoing too loud in the space. Obviously, this was some kind of elaborate joke. Maybe corporate thought it would reduce worker boredom during the overnight shift. Give us something to speculate about. Maybe it was a test to see if I could follow instructions, even absurd ones. Maybe Denise was just burnt out and dramatic, and I'd run into her at the next shift change and we'd laugh about how she scared me. I told myself a lot of things that first night. I told myself the rules were a prank. I told myself Denise was just tired. I told myself this was just a laundromat, fluorescent lights, washing machines, detergent. Nothing more, but I kept the rule sheet close. And when I heard the first washing machine start on its own at 1:47 a.m., I would remember Denise's hollow eyes and the way she'd run to her car. And I would understand that sometimes the strangest things you're told are the truest things you'll ever hear. My shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., 8 hours. I could do 8 hours. I pulled out my phone, opened a podcast, and settled in behind the counter. The machines hummed around me in the sickly yellow light. And somewhere in the back, in row 3, a dryer door opened with a soft metallic creak, then closed again. I told myself it was just the building settling. The first hour passed uneventfully. I familiarized myself with the register system, simple enough, cash or card, standard point-of-sale software that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2008. I counted the till, checked the supply closet for detergent and dryer sheets to sell, wiped down the folding tables that were already clean. Around 11:30 p.m., my first customer arrived. A tired-looking man in hospital scrubs who dumped 3 loads into washers, paid in quarters, and left without making eye contact. Normal. Completely normal. By midnight, he was gone, and I was alone again. The laundromat settled into its night rhythm, the hum of active machines, the occasional beep of a completed cycle, the fluorescent lights casting everything in that jaundiced glow. I scrolled through my phone, texted my roommate that the job seemed fine, just boring. At 12:47 a.m., an elderly woman came in with a single bag of laundry. She smiled at me, and I smiled back. She loaded washer number 7, fed it quarters, and sat down with a magazine so old the cover was curling. She cast a perfectly normal shadow under the overhead lights. I relaxed a little more. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe the rules were just corporate weirdness, and the actual job was just babysitting machines for 8 hours. The elderly woman left at 1:30 a.m., her laundry neatly folded in her bag, wishing me a pleasant evening. The door chimed as she exited. I was alone again. That's when I noticed the homeless man. He was sleeping in the corner near the vending machines, curled up on the cracked tile floor, using a garbage bag as a pillow. I hadn't seen him come in, but Denise's notes, scattered, hurried notes left on loose paper beside the register, mentioned him. Carl, regular. Sleeps here sometimes, don't wake him, he's harmless. I left him alone. At 1:47 a.m. I heard it, a sharp metallic slam from the back of the laundromat, the distinct sound of a washer door being shut firmly, the kind of sound you make when you're closing it with purpose, making sure it latches. I looked up from my phone. The laundromat was empty except for Carl, who hadn't moved. No one else had come in. The door had a bell that chimed every time it opened, and I'd have heard it. I stood up slowly, peering down the aisles toward the back. Nothing. No one. But washer number 23 in the far back corner was running. I could see its light on, could hear the distinctive sound of water filling, the drum beginning its agitation cycle. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing on the tile. The air grew slightly colder as I moved away from the front counter. Row by row, washer by washer, until I stood in front of the number 23. It was definitely running. Full cycle, hot water if the temperature setting was any indication. Through the round glass door, I could see dark fabric tumbling in soapy water. I checked the coin slot. Empty. The digital display should have shown how much credit remained. It was blank except for the cycle indicator. The machine shouldn't be running at all. I reached for the door handle, ready to stop it, to open it and see what the hell was inside, when my brain caught up with my hands and I remembered rule number 2. If a machine starts on its own, let it finish. Do not open it. Do not look inside. My hand froze an inch from the handle. Don't be stupid, I whispered to myself. It's just a malfunction, electrical short. Someone probably started it earlier and I didn't notice. But I had been paying attention. The laundromat had been empty except for the scrubs guy and the elderly woman, and neither had come anywhere near the back row. I watched the dark fabric tumble through the glass. The washer was old, the kind where you could see clearly inside through the door. As the drum rotated, something pale passed by the glass, then again, and again with each rotation. It looked like a hand, a pale hand, fingers spread, pressing against the glass from inside. I stepped back so quickly I nearly tripped. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at the machine, watching the drum rotate, watching the dark fabric tumble, and there it was again. Definitely hand-shaped, definitely pressing against the glass. It's just shadows, I said aloud, my voice tight. Just the fabric bunching up. Just the way the light hits it. The hand pressed against the glass again, this time with fingers splayed wide as if trying to push through. I backed away, nearly running to the front counter. I didn't stop until I was behind the register, the laminated rules sheet in my hands, my breathing too fast. Rule number 2, let it finish. Do not open it. I set a timer on my phone for when a normal wash cycle would end. About 40 minutes. I would not go back there. I would not check on it. I would follow the rules exactly as Denise had instructed. The minutes crawled past. I tried to focus on my phone, on anything but the sound of that washer running in the back. But I could hear it, the water sloshing, the drum rotating, and underneath it all, was that a different sound, like something scratching from inside? At 2:31 a.m., my phone alarm went off. The wash cycle should be finished. I waited 5 more minutes, afraid to check. Finally, I forced myself to walk back to washer number 23. It was off, silent. The drum was still, the water drained. Through the glass, I could see the dark fabric sitting in a wet clump. I did not open the door. Rule number 2 hadn't said what happened if you did, but Denise's eyes had been hollow enough that I didn't want to find out. I returned to the counter and made a note in the log Denise had left. 2:31 a.m. Washer number 23 self-started. Did not investigate. Completed cycle. Machine now off. I noticed that the log had similar entries going back weeks. Washer number 23 self-started. Let it finish. Washer number 23 running at 2:15 a.m. No customer, did not open. 23 again, something pale inside, did not open. My hands were shaking slightly as I closed the log. At 3:00 a.m., Carl woke up, stretched, nodded at me, and left without a word. The bell chimed. I was completely alone now. The laundromat felt different at this hour. Larger somehow. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, and I became acutely aware of how many machines surrounded me. 40 washers, 20 dryers, all of them with round glass doors that now looked less like portholes and more like eyes. I checked my watch. 3:07 a.m. 6 more minutes until 3:13. I looked at the rules sheet again. At 3:13 a.m., face away from the machines. Do not turn around until 3:20 a.m. My phone alarm was set. When it went off, I turned my chair to face the wall behind the counter. I stared at peeling paint, at water stains, at anything but the machines. Behind me, I heard it start, soft at first, a clicking sound like dozens of machine doors unlatching. Then the sound of dryers starting, one after another, even though I knew they were empty. The building filled with the roar of tumbling drums, a mechanical symphony that shouldn't be possible. My hands gripped the edge of the counter. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around to see what was happening. I stared at the wall. The sounds grew louder, closer. I heard footsteps, wet, dragging footsteps on the tile behind me. I heard breathing that wasn't mine. I heard whispers in a language I didn't understand. I stared at the wall. At 3:20 a.m., my alarm went off. The sound stopped instantly. Silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. I slowly turned around. The laundromat looked exactly as it had before. All machines were off. No water on the floor, no sign that anything had happened. Except for one thing. On every single dryer door in row 3, the broken dryers I wasn't supposed to let anyone use, there were handprints. Dozens of them, pressed against the glass from the inside. Small handprints like children's hands. I didn't sleep the rest of that shift. I sat rigid behind the counter, eyes on the door, waiting for 6 a.m. like a prisoner waiting for parole. When the morning attendant arrived at 5:57 a.m., I nearly cried with relief. "How was your first night?" she asked cheerfully, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Fine," I lied. "Totally fine." I clocked out and walked to my car in the pale dawn light, my hands still shaking. I told myself I wouldn't come back, but I needed the money. I needed it desperately. So that evening at 9:45 p.m., I parked in the same spot and walked back through the door. The bell chimed, the fluorescent lights buzzed, and washer number 23 sat silent in the back row waiting for 1:47 a.m. On my third night, I met Danny. He arrived at 9:50 p.m., 5 minutes after me, bursting through the door with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from never having experienced real consequences. Early 20s, snapback worn backwards, phone already in his hand, filming everything. "Yo, you must be Maya," he said, not waiting for confirmation. "I'm Danny, new hire. They got me working the same shift as you, training or whatever." He panned his phone around the laundromat. "This place is perfect. You see the rules yet? The creepy ones? They're blowing up on Reddit. I'm gonna debunk this whole thing, get some viral content going." My stomach sank. "You shouldn't. It's all urban legend bullshit," Danny interrupted, already walking the aisles filming. "Corporate creates these mysterious rules to drum up attention, get people talking, free advertising. It's genius, honestly, but it's all fake." I thought about the hand pressing against the glass of washer number 23, about the small handprints on the row 3 dryer doors that had vanished by morning shift but that I knew I'd seen, about the 7 minutes of sounds I'd endured while facing the wall. "Danny, I really think you should just follow the rules." "Exactly. Don't test them." He laughed, setting his phone on the counter to get a wide shot. That's exactly what they want you to think. Fear-based compliance, classic manipulation. Watch. I'm gonna prove it's all bullshit and my TikTok is gonna explode. The next 2 hours passed in tense normalcy. We had a handful of customers, normal people doing normal laundry. Danny filmed everything with commentary. Hour 1 of debunking the cursed laundromat, nothing weird yet, stay tuned. At 12:47 a.m., Carl came in and settled into his corner. Danny started to film him and I physically pushed his phone down. "Don't," I said. "He's a regular, just leave him alone." Danny rolled his eyes but pocketed his phone. Whatever. This is boring anyway. Nothing's happening. At 1:47 a.m., washer number 23 started on its own. I heard it from the counter, that distinctive slam of the door, the water beginning to fill. My whole body went cold. Danny heard it too. His eyes lit up. "Dude! The self-starting machine, that's in the rules!" He pulled out his phone and ran toward the back row. "Danny, don't!" I called after him, but he was already filming, narrating for his audience. "Okay, so supposedly washer number 23 starts by itself and you're not supposed to look inside. Watch this. I'm gonna open it right now and show you there's nothing." "Danny, stop. Rule number 2 says..." "I know what the fake rules say," he said, reaching for the door handle. Through the glass, I could see dark fabric tumbling and that same pale shape rotating past the window. His hand touched the handle. The lights flickered. Every machine in the building went silent simultaneously, not winding down but stopping instantly as if someone had cut power. The sudden silence was deafening. Danny froze, his hand still on the handle. Through the glass, the pale shape had stopped tumbling. It was pressed flat against the door now, clearly visible. A hand. A human hand, palm out, fingers spread, and it began to push from the inside. The glass bowed outward. Impossible. Safety glass doesn't do that. But I watched it bulge like plastic, the hand pressing harder, and now I could see an arm behind it, and behind that, a face, waterlogged, eyes white, mouth open in a silent scream. "What the fuck?" Danny whispered. His phone was still recording, capturing everything. The washer door exploded outward. Glass and water burst from the machine, drenching Danny. He screamed, stumbling backward, and that's when she appeared. The woman in the red coat. She was standing at the end of row 3 near the broken dryers. I don't know how she got there. I hadn't heard the door chime, hadn't seen anyone enter. She was just there suddenly, as if she'd always been there and we were only now allowed to see her. She was beautiful in the way poisonous things are beautiful. Tall, slim, wearing a vintage red wool coat that looked like it belonged in a 1950s photograph. Her hair was perfectly styled in victory rolls. Her makeup was immaculate, red lips, winged eyeliner, but her movements were wrong. Too fluid, too smooth, as if her joints bent in extra places. And her smile, it was too wide, stretching beyond where a human smile should end. Danny saw her. Despite his phone being waterlogged and sparking, despite the broken glass at his feet, he saw her and his brain tried to make sense of it in the only way he knew: customer service. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, we're experiencing a technical difficulty." "Danny, don't!" I screamed from the counter. "Rule 1, don't acknowledge her." But he was already walking toward her, his training kicking in, approaching a customer to assist. The woman's smile grew wider, her lips splitting past where skin should allow. "Ma'am, those dryers are out of order, you can't..." He reached out to touch her shoulder to guide her away from row 3. His hand made contact with the red coat. Her head swiveled toward him. And I mean swiveled. Her neck rotated a full 180 degrees while her body remained facing forward. The bones made cracking sounds like green wood snapping. Her face was inches from his now, that impossible smile stretching wider still. And I could see that her eyes were completely white. No pupils, no iris. just white. Danny's scream was cut short. The lights began to flicker violently, on, off, strobing the scene in rapid bursts. In the flashes of light, I saw her mouth opening impossibly wide, Danny's face going slack, her hand, pale, with fingers too long, touching his forehead. Blood beginning to run from his nose. The lights stabilized. 3 seconds of violent strobing, then steady fluorescent yellow again. The woman was gone. Danny was on the floor, lying on his back in the puddle of water from the burst washer. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, unblinking. A thin trail of blood ran from his nose down his cheek, pooling on the tile. I ran to him. "Danny! Danny, can you hear me?" His eyes didn't track me. He didn't blink. His chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, but otherwise he didn't move. He was alive, but completely unresponsive. I called 911, my voice shaking as I tried to explain. Coworker collapsed, not responding. Something happened with a machine malfunction. I didn't mention the woman in red. How could I? The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes. They loaded Danny onto a stretcher, trying to get him to respond, shining lights in his eyes, asking him questions. Nothing. He just stared, breathing, existing, but not present. As they wheeled him out, one of the EMTs turned to me. "Has he taken anything? Drugs? Did he hit his head?" "I don't know. I don't think so. He was just..." There was a woman, and then he was like this. The EMT exchanged a look with his partner. "What woman?" I realized Carl was still in his corner. He'd watched everything. When the EMTs left and I turned to him, he was sitting up, looking at me with ancient, knowing eyes. "You tried to warn him," Carl said. His voice was gravelly, unused. "They never listen. The ones who think they know better." "What was she?" I whispered. Carl stood slowly, gathering his plastic bags. "You read the rules. You know what she is." He shuffled toward the door, then paused. "She's here more often now. Used to be once a month, maybe. Now it's every week, sometimes twice. The place is getting worse." He left, the bell chiming behind him. I stood alone in the laundromat at 2:47 a.m. Water still pooled on the floor, broken glass glittering under fluorescent lights. Washer Num 23's door hung open, its drum empty now. Nothing inside but shadows. I thought about quitting, about walking out right then and never coming back. But Danny's phone was still on the floor, cracked and water-damaged, but possibly still containing footage. I picked it up carefully. The screen was shattered, but it powered on. I found the video file from tonight. I watched it. I watched Danny film washer number 23 starting on its own. Watched him approach it, reach for the door. Watched the lights flicker. But in the video, the woman never appeared. The footage showed Danny reaching for the washer, then suddenly collapsing, blood running from his nose. No red coat, no twisted neck, no impossible smile. The video showed a young man having what looked like a spontaneous seizure or stroke. It didn't show the truth. I deleted the video. I don't know why. Maybe to protect him from being labeled insane. Maybe to protect myself from having to explain what I saw. I finished my shift in numb silence. At 6 a.m., I told the morning attendant that Danny had a medical emergency, but I didn't have details. I clocked out. I drove home. I didn't sleep that day. I just lay on my friend's couch, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Danny's blank eyes. At 9:45 p.m., I went back to work, because I needed the money, because 3 months of back rent doesn't forgive itself, because I had nowhere else to go. But this time I kept the laminated rules in my pocket, and I read them at least a dozen times before midnight. I would not make Danny's mistake. I would follow every rule exactly, even if I didn't understand them, even if they seemed cruel or impossible, because the alternative was lying on the floor with blood running from your nose, staring at nothing, trapped somewhere behind your own eyes. Danny never spoke again. I learned that 3 days later from a manager who called to inform me I'd be working alone until they hired a replacement. He was in a long-term care facility now. Breathing, existing, but not present. His eyes still open, still staring at something only he could see. After Danny, the laundromat felt different. Or maybe I was different. Maybe once you've watched someone's consciousness get ripped away by a thing in a red coat with a neck that rotates like an owl's, you stop being able to see the world as safe and rational. I worked 3 more shifts in increasing unease. The rules kept me alive, kept me intact. But they didn't provide understanding. And I needed to understand. I needed to know what this place was, what the woman in red was, what had happened to Danny. On my 7th night during my 4 a.m. lunch break, I decided to investigate. The back office was small and cluttered, a desk piled with papers, file cabinets that probably hadn't been organized in years. An ancient desktop computer that wheezed when I woke it up. I started digging through the desk drawers. In the bottom drawer, beneath outdated tax forms and ancient employee handbooks, I found it, a water-damaged composition notebook with no label, its pages warped and stained. I opened it carefully. The first page was dated 3 years ago, the handwriting neat and deliberate. June 3rd, first night shift. Manager gave me the rules. Thought it was a joke. Nothing unusual happened. Maybe I got the safe shift. The entries continued, documenting the slow realization that the rules weren't a joke. I read through weeks of increasing unease, of machines starting themselves, of the 3:13 a.m. ritual, of close calls with rule violations. Then about 4 months in, the handwriting became more frantic. September 17th. I've been researching the building's history. The library has old newspaper archives. This laundromat was built in 1987, but before that, this site was part of something else, something much older and much worse. September 23rd, found it. The Riverside Asylum, 1947-1952. It was a psychiatric facility, and this was where the laundry operation was. Patients did the washing, part of their therapy. The main hospital was demolished decades ago, but the laundry building stayed up until the fire. My hands were shaking as I turned the page. September 30th. The fire happened on October 14th, 1952. 17 patients were working the night shift in the laundry when it started. The official report says faulty wiring, but witness statements describe the doors being locked from outside. 17 people trapped inside with industrial washers and dryers, with boiling water and scorching heat. They tried to escape. Some of them tried to hide in the dryers. The fire department found remains inside the machines. They burned alive while trying to crawl through the dryers to safety. I felt sick. The dryers in row 3, the broken dryers, the handprints on the glass. The journal continued. October 7th. I've been seeing her more often. The woman in red. The rules say never acknowledge her. I've been following that rule perfectly. But I found an old photograph from the asylum. Her name was Nurse Diane Hartwell. She was the night supervisor in the laundry. She was also the one who locked the doors the night of the fire. Witnesses said she stood outside watching it burn, smiling while the patients screamed. She disappeared after the fire. They never found her body, but I think I know where she went. October 14th, anniversary of the fire. She's been here all night, walking between the machines, running her fingers along the dryers in row 3. She's looking for something, or someone. The patients are here too. I can feel them. Trapped in the cycle. Wash, dry, repeat. Forever. The next entries became increasingly disturbed. November 2nd, I made a mistake. I watched the security footage from the southwest corner camera. Rule number 8 says never watch it. Now I know why. The footage shows what's really here, what's always been here. I can't unsee it. They're in the machines, all of them, still burning, still trying to escape. The footage shows them crawling inside dryers over and over, the cycle never ending. And Nurse Hartwell watches them. She makes sure they can never leave. November 15th. I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore, but I'm not sure I can leave. I tried to quit and the manager said something strange. You can leave when the cycle completes. What does that mean? What cycle? Mine, theirs, the machines. The final entry was dated November 28th, 3 years ago. She knows I watched the footage. She looks at me now even though I don't acknowledge her. Last night she stood directly in front of the counter and smiled at me for 7 minutes straight. Her smile splits her face. There's nothing behind it but darkness. I'm going to try the emergency shutoff. If the whole building goes dark, maybe it breaks the cycle. Maybe it lets them finish dying. Maybe it lets me leave. Mr. Kowalski gave me a key. He said he's been trying to help people escape this place for 30 years. He said once you use the shutoff, you can never come back. The place marks you as an interferer. But I don't want to come back. I just want to get out. If you're reading this, follow the rules. Don't watch the footage. Don't try to help. Just survive your shift and leave. This place isn't a laundromat. It's a prison, and Nurse Hartwell is the warden. The journal ended there. No name, no signature. I checked the file cabinet for old employment records. The person who'd worked before Denise was named Marcus Webb. He'd quit without notice in November 3 years ago. I tried to find information about him online, but there was nothing. No social media, no public records, nothing. As if Marcus Webb had simply ceased to exist. At 5 a.m., an elderly man came in carrying a laundry basket with a single blanket inside. I recognized him from the journal, Mr. Kowalski. He was thin, probably in his late 70s, wearing clothes that looked expensive but decades out of style. He walked to washer number 12 and began loading his blanket with careful, ritualistic movements. I approached him carefully. "Excuse me, sir? Are you Mr. Kowalski?" He looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. "I am. I found a journal from someone who worked here. They mentioned you gave them a key to an emergency shutoff." Mr. Kowalski continued loading his blanket, feeding quarters into the machine. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost sad. "I've been coming here for 30 years. Every Thursday night, I wash the same blanket. I try to help when I can." "Why? What is this place?" He started the washer and watched it begin to fill. "In 1952, I was 17 years old. My mother was a patient at Riverside Asylum. She worked in the laundry as part of her treatment. October 14th, I came to visit her. I arrived just as the fire started." He paused, his hands gripping the edge of the machine. "I watched it burn. I heard the screaming. I saw Nurse Hartwell standing outside, watching, smiling. And I saw my mother's face in the window, begging to be let out. 'I'm so sorry,' I whispered. The building burned down, but the foundation remained. And the trauma that intense, doesn't just fade. It soaks into the ground, into the structure. When they built this laundromat in 1987, they built it right on top of that foundation. The same washers and dryers in roughly the same positions. And the cycle began again. Wash, dry, repeat. The 17 patients trapped forever in the moment of their death, trying eternally to escape through the machines. He turned to look at me. Nurse Hartwell trapped herself too, in a way. Her hatred, her cruelty, it bound her here. She patrols this place, making sure no one interferes, making sure the patients never escape the cycle. She's stronger now than she was, fed by decades of fear, by the people who break the rules, by people like your coworker who try to challenge what they don't understand. How do I stop her? I asked. How do I help the patients? You don't. Mr. Kowalski's voice was firm. The rules exist to keep you separate from them, to keep you from being pulled into the cycle. The emergency shutoff can destroy the building's power, potentially break the cycle, but it marks you. Once you interfere, you can't come back. And even that might not be enough. The trauma runs deeper than electricity. He pulled a brass key from his pocket and pressed it into my hand. Basement access. There's a panel behind the water heater. If things get too bad, if you have no choice, that's where you shut it all down. But understand, using it means you become part of the story. You become someone Nurse Hartwell hunts. You'll see her everywhere. Every laundromat, every washing machine, every reflection in glass. Once you interfere with her prison, you're marked. His washer beeped. The cycle was complete. He opened it, pulled out the blanket, completely dry even though it had been in a washer, not a dryer, and placed it back in his basket. "That's impossible," I said, staring at the dry blanket. Mr. Kowalski smiled sadly. "I'm not really here, Maya. Not in the way you think. I'm part of the cycle now, too. I've been dead for 30 years. I died in 1995 trying to shut down the first version of this building. But I can't leave. I'm trapped in my own loop. Thursday nights, washing my mother's blanket, trying to help workers survive. The blanket isn't real. I'm not real, not anymore. We're all just cycles repeating." He walked toward the door. At 3:13 a.m., I was supposed to face the wall. It was 5:07 a.m. now, but I hadn't forgotten the rule. When the door opened, I saw something impossible. The street outside was dark, the sky black, and the clock on the wall behind me now read 3:13 a.m. Time had looped. Mr. Kowalski stepped through the door into the darkness, and when it closed, the fluorescent lights buzzed, and the clock read 5:08 a.m. again. Morning light filtered through the grimy windows. I looked at the brass key in my palm. It was solid, real, warm from his hand. But Mr. Kowalski had said he'd been dead for 30 years. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried until my shift ended at 6 a.m. I didn't work the next 2 nights. Called in sick, which wasn't entirely a lie. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat. Kept seeing Nurse Hartwell's split smile every time I closed my eyes. But by the 3rd night, my bank account was screaming and my roommate was dropping hints about rent contribution. I had to go back. Thursday night, October 28th, the night Mr. Kowalski always came to wash his blanket. I arrived at 9:45 p.m. with the brass key in my pocket, heavy as a promise. The laundromat looked the same as always. Sickly yellow lights, buzzing fluorescence, the eternal hum of machines. But now I knew what was beneath it, the foundation of the asylum's laundry. The burned remains of 17 patients still trying to escape. Nurse Hartwell patrolling, eternally ensuring they never do. My shift started quietly. A few normal customers came and went. Carl arrived at his usual time, nodded to me, settled into his corner. Everything according to routine. At 3:13 a.m., I faced the wall as required. The sounds began, the clicking of doors, the roar of empty dryers, the wet footsteps. I gripped the edge of the counter and stared at peeling paint, counting down 7 minutes. At 3:20 a.m., silence returned. I turned around to find the laundromat empty. Carl had apparently left during those 7 minutes. But on the counter in front of me was something that hadn't been there before. A photograph, old and faded in a cracked frame. I picked it up carefully. It showed the Riverside Asylum in its operational days. Women in hospital gowns stood in front of industrial washers supervised by nurses in crisp uniforms. In the center of the photograph, I recognized her immediately. Nurse Diane Hartwell, younger but with the same unsettling smile, standing with her arms crossed, watching the patients work. On the back of the photograph, someone had written in shaking handwriting, "She chose to stay. She could have left after the fire, but she chose to watch them burn. Some cruelty is so pure it becomes eternal." I set the photograph down and noticed Carl standing in the doorway. Not his corner, the front door. He must have just come back in, though I hadn't heard the bell chime. "You found the journal," he said, not a question. "Yes, and I met Mr. Kowalski." I paused. "Or his ghost, or his loop. I'm not sure what to call it anymore." Carl walked slowly to the counter. Up close, I could see how old he actually was. Ancient, his face mapped with wrinkles, his eyes carrying the weight of decades. I knew Henry Kowalski. Knew him when he was alive, knew him after. He's trying to help. They all are, the ones who got pulled into the cycle but maintained enough consciousness to act, but they're limited. They can only do so much within the rules of this place. "Are you—" I hesitated. "Are you real? Are you alive?" Carl smiled, and it was genuinely sad. "I'm alive. For now. I've been sleeping here for 5 years, no home, nowhere else to go, but I'm careful. I follow the rules. I don't acknowledge what shouldn't be acknowledged. I don't interfere. And the place tolerates me. Barely. Why do you stay? Because leaving means being out there." He gestured vaguely toward the door, toward the world beyond. "And out there, I'm invisible. Nobody sees homeless people, nobody acknowledges us. We're already ghosts to society. At least in here, the rules are clear. I know how to survive here. Out there." He shook his head. "Out there are no rules to follow, no guidelines for staying alive. In here, if I follow the protocol, I make it to morning. That's more certainty than I've had in years." I understood that more than I wanted to admit. My own desperation for this job, for the $18 an hour that stood between me and complete financial collapse, wasn't so different from Carl's choice. "The journal mentioned that interfering marks you," I said. "That using the emergency shutoff means Nurse Hartwell hunts you everywhere. Have you ever seen someone get marked?" Carl's expression darkened. 3 times. 3 people who tried to help someone approaching row 3, or who tried to stop the self-starting machines, or who watched the security footage and couldn't live with what they saw. They tried to break the cycle. They tried to free the patients. What happened to them? They started seeing her everywhere, not just here, everywhere. Reflections in windows, standing in their homes, waiting outside their cars. The cycle followed them, and eventually she claimed them. They'd disappear, and then they'd show up again, here, in the machines. Part of the wash, dry, repeat. New patients for an eternal laundry. My hands were shaking. The brass key felt heavier in my pocket. "But here's what the journal didn't tell you," Carl continued. "The rules aren't just about survival. They're about maintaining the boundary. As long as the living follow the rules, they stay separate from the dead. But the boundary is getting thinner. You felt it, didn't you? Time looping when Kowalski left. The way 313 seems to last longer than 7 minutes, even though the clock says otherwise. The patients are pressing harder against the barrier. They want out. They've been trapped for 70 years, experiencing their burning death over and over. Their desperation is eroding the rules. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Just keep following the rules until—" "What? Until the boundary breaks completely?" "You survive," Carl said simply. "You work your shifts, you collect your pay, you stay alive. That's all any of us can do. The moment you try to be a hero, the moment you think you can fix this, that's when she gets you." He started to shuffle back toward his corner, then paused. "But if you do decide to interfere, if things get bad enough that you have no choice but to use that key in your pocket—" He knew I had it. Somehow, make sure it counts. Make sure you actually save someone. Because you only get one chance. Once you're marked, you can't interfere again. You can only run. At 4 a.m., I took my lunch break in the back office. I couldn't eat. Just sat with Marcus Webb's journal and the photograph of Nurse Hartwell, trying to make sense of the impossible situation I'd found myself in. The door opened without a knock. I looked up, expecting Carl or maybe another time loop. It was Mr. Kowalski, but not the ghost version I'd met before. This was different, more solid, more present. He sat across from me at the cluttered desk, and I could smell him. Old wool, mothballs, the faint scent of pipe tobacco. "You're wondering why I keep coming back," he said. "You said you're dead, that you're in a loop. But you feel real right now. Thursday nights between 4 and 4:30 a.m., I'm allowed to be more real. It's part of my cycle. For 30 minutes a week, I get to be Henry Kowalski again, not just a ghost repeating actions. And I use that time to warn people, to give them the key, to hope that maybe eventually someone will be brave enough and smart enough to do what I failed to do." "What did you fail to do?" His eyes were heavy with regret. "I tried to burn it down. The original building back in 1995, I thought if I destroyed the structure, the cycle would break. I snuck in with gasoline, ready to torch the whole place. But she found me, Nurse Hartwell, and she showed me what happens to interferers." He rolled up his sleeve. His arm was covered in burn scars, old and puckered. "She made me feel what they felt. The 17 patients. The fire, the heat, the desperation. She made me experience their death loop for what felt like hours. When I finally escaped, when I ran outside, I thought I was free, but I'd been marked. I saw her everywhere, in every reflection, every dark window, every washing machine I passed. It drove me mad. I tried to end it, tried to die, but even that didn't work. I'm trapped in my own cycle now, repeating Thursday nights forever, trying to help others succeed where I failed." "Why don't you just tell people to stay away?" I asked. "Why give them the key at all?" "Because someone has to try. The patients are suffering eternally. Nurse Hartwell's cruelty compounds with each passing year, and the boundary is weakening. More people are getting pulled in. The cycles are becoming more aggressive. Eventually, the suffering will spill out beyond this building. It'll spread, and then we won't be talking about one laundromat in Newark. We'll be talking about an infection, a spreading trauma that claims entire neighborhoods." He placed both hands on the desk, leaning forward. "The emergency shutoff might not free them, it might not stop her, but it's the only weapon we have. It cuts the power, breaks the electrical cycle that the machines run on. For a few moments, the boundary drops completely. In those moments, anything is possible. The patients might escape. Nurse Hartwell might lose her grip, or it might make everything worse." "That's not very reassuring," I said. "I'm not here to reassure you, I'm here to give you a choice. You can follow the rules, survive your shifts, collect your pay, and hope the boundary doesn't break while you're here. Or you can be ready. If something happens, if someone's in danger, if you have no other option, you have the key. You have the knowledge. You can act. But I'll be marked. Yes, I'll see her everywhere. Yes. And I might fail anyway. Yes." He stood slowly. "But you'll have tried. And sometimes trying is the only thing that separates the living from the ghosts. We're all caught in cycles, Maya. Work, bills, survival. The question is, when the moment comes, will you choose to break your cycle to help someone break theirs?" At 4:30 a.m. exactly, Mr. Kowalski flickered like a television losing signal, and then he was gone. The chair across from me was empty. Had been empty all along, maybe. But the brass key in my pocket was still there. Still warm, still waiting. I finished my shift in silence. At 6 a.m. I clocked out and drove home through rush hour traffic. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, none of them knowing that beneath a laundromat in Newark, 17 souls burned forever in an eternal loop. I wondered how many other places were like this. How many buildings held trapped suffering maintained by rules that kept the living separate from the dead. I wondered how many more nights I could follow the rules before something forced me to break them. And I wondered if, When that moment came, I'd be brave enough to use the key, or if I'd just run like any rational person would. I didn't know yet, but I had a feeling I'd find out soon. It happened on my 13th night. The shift started normally. Thursday, November 4th, cold and drizzling outside. I arrived at 9:45 p.m., did my usual setup, checked the rules one more time even though I had them memorized. Carl was already in his corner. He nodded to me and I nodded back. Our routine. At 1:47 a.m., washer number 23 started on its own, right on schedule. I noted it in the log and stayed behind the counter. By 2:31 a.m. it finished. The cycle continued as always. At 2:47 a.m. the door chimed. A woman entered with a little girl. The woman was maybe 30, tired-looking, wearing hospital scrubs under a thin jacket. The little girl was maybe 4 years old, wearing pajamas with cartoon characters, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Thank God you're open," the woman said, hauling a garbage bag full of laundry. "I just got off a double shift and we had an accident." She gestured to the little girl. "And I need to wash her sheets before morning. Are you open all night?" "Yes, ma'am," I said automatically. "All night." She paid for 2 washers and 1 dryer, got detergent from me, and set up at machines in row 1. The little girl stood close to her mother, watching the clothes tumble, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "Sweetie, don't wander," the mother said, starting to sort dark clothes from light. "Stay right here where I can see you." The little girl nodded but was already looking around the laundromat with a child's curiosity. So many interesting machines, so many round glass doors like portholes into other worlds. I watched from the counter, uneasy for reasons I couldn't articulate. Something about the timing. Something about how quiet Carl had gotten in his corner, how still. The mother loaded the first washer, started it, then began loading the second. She was exhausted. I could see it in every movement, in the way she sagged against the machine while waiting for it to fill. The little girl wandered, just a few steps at first. Down row 1, looking at the spinning clothes. Then she turned at the end of the row and started down row 2. "Emma, stay close," the mother called without looking up. Emma continued walking, drawn by childish curiosity. She was heading toward the back of the laundromat, toward row 3. My heart started pounding. I looked at the rule sheet. Rule number 6. Do not interfere with customers approaching row 3. It is not your responsibility. Emma was now in row 2, trailing her fingers along the machines, humming to herself. Her mother was focused on adding fabric softener, not watching. Emma turned into row 3. "Hey!" I called out, my voice strangled. "Hey, miss! Your daughter's—" The mother looked up, saw Emma heading toward the back, and called out, "Emma, I said stay close. Come back here." But Emma had seen something interesting. Row 3 held the broken dryers, the ones I was never supposed to let anyone use. The ones with the small handprints on the glass that appeared and disappeared. Emma walked up to dryer number 3 and pressed her small hand against the glass door. On the other side, a handprint appeared, matching hers exactly. Palm to palm through the glass, the same size, as if another child was inside the dryer reaching back. Emma smiled. "Mommy, there's a kid in here." "Emma, that's not—" The mother was walking over now, not running, but moving with the tired patience of a parent who'd explained too many things to an imaginative 4-year-old. Emma reached for the dryer door handle. I vaulted over the counter without thinking. "Don't open that." But I was too slow. Emma's small fingers closed around the handle and pulled. The dryer door swung open. Inside was darkness. Not the ordinary darkness of an empty dryer. This was deep, absolute darkness that seemed to extend far beyond where the back of the dryer should be. And from that darkness came cold air, so cold it was painful, carrying the smell of burning hair and charred flesh. Something moved in the darkness, Small figures, child-sized, their skin blackened and cracked, their eyes white like boiled eggs. They were reaching out, dozens of small hands grasping toward the opening, toward Emma. "Mommy?" Emma's voice was very small. The mother screamed and grabbed Emma, yanking her backward. The stuffed rabbit fell from Emma's arms, tumbling into the dryer, into the darkness. I dove forward and slammed the dryer door shut. The latch clicked. The small hands vanished. The darkness was contained again behind the round glass. But inside the dryer, I could see the stuffed rabbit lying on the drum. And around it, pressing against the glass from inside, were faces. Children's faces, burned and suffering, their mouths open in silent screams. The lights began to flicker. "Get out," I said to the mother. "Take your daughter and get out right now." "But our laundry—" "Leave it. Go." She heard something in my voice, some absolute certainty, and she picked up Emma and ran for the door. The bell chimed as they exited into the cold November night. The lights continued flickering, on, off, on, off. In the strobing light, I saw her. Nurse Hartwell stood at the end of row 3, her red coat pristine, bornut, her smile splitting her face. She was looking directly at me. She'd witnessed my interference. Rule number 6 said not to interfere with customers approaching row 3. I'd interfered. I'd broken the rule. I'd saved that child. But I'd marked myself. The lights stabilized. Nurse Hartwell took one step toward me, then another. Her movements too smooth, her neck beginning that impossible rotation. Behind the counter, Carl was standing. "Maya, the key! Now!" I ran for the back office, Nurse Hartwell's footsteps behind me. Not the wet, dragging steps I'd heard during the 313 ritual, but sharp, deliberate clicks of heels on tile getting closer. I burst through the office door, slammed it, locked it. Through the door, I heard her stop outside. Heard her breathing, if that's what the sound was. Rhythmic, mechanical, like the rotation of a dryer drum. Then she knocked. 5 precise knocks. "You interfered," her voice came through the door. It was wrong. Too many tones layered together like a choir speaking in unison. "You saved one, but you've marked yourself. Now you're mine to claim. I'll find you in every reflection, every dark window, every washing machine you pass. You'll see me everywhere, and when you're tired, when you let your guard down, I'll be there, and you'll join the cycle." "Basement!" Carl's voice shouting from somewhere in the laundromat. "The shut-off!" I looked around the office frantically. There, a door I'd assumed was a closet. I tried the handle. Locked. I pulled out Mr. Kowalski's brass key with shaking hands and inserted it. The lock turned smoothly as if it had been waiting decades for this exact key. The door opened to reveal stairs descending into darkness. Behind me, the office door splintered. Nurse Hartwell was coming through. I ran down the basement stairs into absolute darkness, using my phone's flashlight to navigate. The basement was old, older than the laundromat above. These were the original foundations, the stone and concrete of the Riverside Asylum's laundry facility. Old pipes ran along the ceiling. Water dripped somewhere, and there, behind an ancient water heater, I saw it. An electrical panel covered in warning labels and caution tape decades old. The main shut-off. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Looked back to see Nurse Hartwell descending, her head rotating fully around to keep her eyes on me while her body walked down the steps. "You can't stop the cycle," she said. "I've maintained it for 70 years. 17 patients burning forever, trying eternally to escape. It's beautiful, perfect, eternal suffering refined to its purest form. And now, you'll join them." My hand found the main breaker, a large red lever covered in dust. I looked at Nurse Hartwell, at her impossible neck, at her split smile. "They shouldn't suffer anymore, I said. 70 years is enough. Let them finish dying." I pulled the lever. Every light went out. Every machine stopped. The eternal hum of the laundromat died, and for the first time in decades, the building fell completely silent. In that silence, I heard new sounds. Voices. 17 voices, overlapping, crying, laughing, speaking in relief and release. The patients, freed from the cycle, finally allowed to finish their deaths and move beyond. Nurse Hartwell screamed. Not her layered voice, but a single human voice, full of rage and loss. Her form began to flicker like Mr. Kowalski had, like she was losing coherence. "No! They're mine! I chose to watch them burn. I earned this. You can't—" Her voice cut off. In the darkness, I felt something massive shift, like the building itself was exhaling after holding its breath for 70 years. The temperature rose suddenly, not cold anymore, but warm, normal. Then emergency lights flickered on, battery-powered, revealing the basement. Nurse Hartwell was gone. I was alone. I climbed the stairs on shaking legs. The laundromat was dark except for emergency lighting, every machine silent. The air smelled different, less like detergent and mildew, more like old dust settling, like a wound finally closing. Carl stood by the counter, looking around in wonder. "You did it. You actually did it. I can feel it. They're gone. The patients, they've moved on. The cycle's broken." "But she said I'm marked," I whispered. "Nurse Hartwell said she'll find me everywhere." "Maybe," Carl said. "Or maybe she's gone too. Without the patients to torture, without the cycle to maintain, maybe she had nothing left to sustain her. We'll find out." The mother had left her laundry. I could see it in the washers in row 1, half-finished cycles interrupted. I wondered if she'd come back for it. I wondered if I should call her, explain. But explain what? How do you tell someone they almost lost their daughter to the ghosts of patients who burned alive in 1952? At 6 a.m., the morning shift manager arrived to find the power out. She looked at me, at Carl, at the silent machines. "What happened?" she asked. "Electrical failure," I said. "I had to use the emergency shutoff. Building needs an electrician." She sighed, already pulling out her phone. "Okay, clock out, Maya. We'll have to close until this is fixed. I'll call you when we reopen." I clocked out and walked to my car in the gray dawn light. Carl followed me out, carrying his plastic bags. "What now?" I asked him. "Now you find out if you're marked. If you see her in reflections in windows and machines, you'll know. But I have a feeling you won't. I think you ended it, Maya. Really ended it. Not just for you, but for all of us." "What about Mr. Kowalski? Will he finally be free?" Carl smiled. "I think so. I think his cycle ended when yours began. That's how it works. One person takes up the burden so another can be released." He walked away down the empty street, and I wondered if I'd ever see him again. I drove home and collapsed on my friend's couch, exhausted. I slept for 14 hours. When I woke, there were messages on my phone. The laundromat was being permanently closed. Electrical inspectors had found fundamental structural issues with the building. It would be demolished in 2 weeks. My final paycheck was being mailed. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt watched. That night, I looked in the mirror while brushing my teeth, and behind my reflection, I saw her. Nurse Hartwell standing in my bathroom, her red coat pristine, her smile splitting her face. She was gone when I spun around. Nothing there but my toothbrush falling into the sink. But I'd seen her. Carl had been wrong. I was marked after all. The sighting started small. A flash of red in my peripheral vision while grocery shopping. A too-wide smile reflected in a car window as I walked past. The feeling of being watched in every room with a mirror. I covered the mirrors in my friend's apartment with sheets. Avoided reflective surfaces. Stopped looking at my phone screen when it was dark. But Nurse Hartwell was patient. She'd maintained a torture cycle for 70 years. She could wait for me to slip. 3 days after the laundromat closed, I was doing laundry at a different facility across town. I'd avoided it as long as possible, but I'd run out of clean clothes. The moment I walked in, I felt it. The air temperature dropped. The fluorescent lights flickered. Every washing machine in the building stopped simultaneously. The few other customers looked around, confused. The attendant went to check the breaker, but I knew she was here. She'd followed me. In the round glass door of washer number 23, because it was always 23, I saw her reflection standing behind me, close enough to touch. I ran, straight out the door, leaving my laundry, leaving my detergent, not caring. I got in my car and drove with shaking hands. But I saw her at every stoplight, standing on corners, staring from storefronts. Always in reflections, never directly visible, always smiling. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to my roommate's apartment creak and settle, jumping at every sound. At 3:13 a.m., of course at 3:13 a.m., I heard it. The sound of a dryer running. My roommate didn't have a dryer in her apartment. The nearest one was in the basement laundry room. The sound was coming from inside the walls. I sat up slowly. The mechanical tumbling, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump was getting louder. And underneath it I heard voices. Children's voices, not laughing or crying, just calling my name over and over. Maya, Maya, Maya. The apartment walls began to bulge, the paint cracked. Something was pushing through from inside. Small hands, blackened and burned, pressed against the wallpaper from within. Dozens of them, the children from the fire, the ones I'd freed, except they weren't freed, they were still trapped. And now they were coming for me. I grabbed my phone, my keys, my coat. I ran from the apartment into the hallway. Behind me I heard the wallpaper tearing, the hands breaking through. I made it to my car and drove without destination, just drove, while the city blurred past and every reflective surface showed me Nurse Hartwell's smile. At 4:00 a.m. I found myself parked outside the condemned laundromat. Chain-link fence surrounded it now, warning signs posted. The building looked dead, its windows dark, its neon sign off, but the front door was open, just slightly. An invitation. I got out of the car. Every rational thought screamed at me to leave, to keep driving, to run until I hit the ocean. But where would I go? She was in every reflection. The cycle was following me. I'd broken it at the laundromat, but apparently I'd just moved it. Relocated it to myself. I climbed the fence and approached the door. Inside, the laundromat was dark and silent, no power, no humming machines, just empty shells of washers and dryers in neat rows. "I know you're here," I called out. My voice echoed strangely. The emergency lights flickered on, and there she was, Nurse Hartwell, standing in the center of the space, her red coat immaculate. "You broke the cycle," she said in that layered voice. "You freed my patients. 70 years of perfect suffering, and you ended it in one moment of misguided heroism." "They were burning forever," I said. "They didn't deserve that." "They were mine!" Her voice rose to a shriek. "I locked them in, I watched them burn, I earned the right to keep them, and you took that from me?" Her neck rotated, her head spinning to face me while her body remained still. Her smile split wider, showing darkness behind her teeth. "So I'll start a new cycle with you. You and all the others who've interfered over the years. Marcus Webb, that college boy who tried to debunk the rules. Everyone who thought they could help, who thought they could be heroes. You're all mine now, and I'll make you burn forever just like they did." The machines around me began to shake. Every washer door flew open simultaneously, revealing darkness inside each one, the same impossible darkness that had been in dryer number 3. And from that darkness, hands began to emerge, Not the burned children, but others. The marked ones. The people who'd interfered and been claimed. I saw Danny, the co-worker who'd touched Nurse Hartwell's shoulder. He crawled out of a washer, his eyes still blank and staring, blood still trickling from his nose. I saw Marcus Webb, the journal writer, emerging from another machine, his hands burned, his face locked in silent terror. I saw others I didn't recognize, decades of victims, all marked by Nurse Hartwell, all claimed by the cycle. They surrounded me, reaching with cold hands. "The emergency shut-off won't work this time," Nurse Hartwell said. "You already used it. You already interfered. Now the cycle includes you. You'll burn with them forever and I'll watch. Just like I watched the asylum patients. Perfect. Eternal. Mine." The marked ones grabbed me, their hands ice cold. They began pulling me toward washer number 23, its door open, its interior showing that impossible darkness. I fought, but there were too many of them. They were dragging me closer to the machine, and I could feel cold air rushing out of it. Could smell burning. "Wait!" I shouted. "Wait! You said you watch them burn. That's what you do. You watch. But if you put me in the cycle, if you make me part of the suffering, who will you watch? Who will witness your cruelty?" The marked ones paused. Nurse Hartwell's head rotated back to face me properly. "What?" "You need witnesses," I said desperately. "That's why you mark people, but don't immediately claim them. That's why you let them live for a while, seeing you in reflections, knowing you're coming. You need them to be afraid. You need them to witness your power, but if you put everyone in the cycle, if everyone's trapped in the suffering, then no one's watching, no one's afraid. And what's the point of cruelty if no one witnesses it?" Nurse Hartwell's smile wavered for the first time. "You locked those patients in and watched them burn because you wanted to see their suffering," I continued. "You've maintained this cycle for 70 years because you want to watch them try to escape over and over. But I ended that cycle. Your patients are gone. You have no one to watch anymore, and if you put me in a new cycle, you'll be alone again. No witnesses, no one to appreciate your perfect eternal torture. I'll mark others," she hissed. "I'll claim new victims, "The laundromat is closed," I interrupted. "Condemned. Being demolished. Your anchor point is gone. How will you mark new people? How will you find new witnesses? I might be the last person who knows you exist. The last person who can spread your story, who can make sure your cruelty is remembered. If you claim me, you'll be forgotten. Just an empty building with an unconfirmed urban legend." I could see her hesitating, her form flickering slightly. "Let me go," I said quietly. "Let me be your witness. I'll tell your story. I'll make sure people know what you did, what you are. I'll carry your memory. Isn't that better than silence? Isn't that better than being forgotten?" For a long moment, Nurse Hartwell stood perfectly still. The marked ones around me had stopped pulling, were frozen in place like mannequins. Then she spoke, her voice quieter, almost human. "You'll tell my story?" "Yes, every detail. The asylum, the fire, the patients, the cycle. Your cruelty will be remembered, witnessed. Isn't that what you want?" Her smile slowly returned, but different this time. Not impossibly wide, almost natural, almost human. "You're clever," she said. "Clever enough to break the cycle, clever enough to mark yourself, and now clever enough to bargain." She took a step back. "Very well. You'll be my witness. You'll carry my story. And if you tell it well, if you make sure my power is remembered, I won't claim you." The marked ones released me, retreating back into the darkness of the machines. One by one, they crawled back into the washers, back into the cycle. Danny, Marcus, the others, all of them disappearing into the impossible darkness. "But if you fail," Nurse Hartwell continued, "if you let my story fade, if people forget what happened here, I'll find you. I'll be in every reflection, every dark window, every washing machine you pass. And when you're old and tired and have let your guard down, I'll claim you then. Is that understood?" "Yes," I whispered. "Then go. Be my witness. Tell my story." She turned away from me, her red coat swirling. She walked toward row 3, toward the broken dryers, and as she walked, she began to fade. By the time she reached dryer number 3, she was translucent. She opened the door and stepped inside, and the darkness swallowed her. The emergency lights went out. I stood alone in the dark laundromat, shaking, alive. I left quickly, climbing back over the fence, getting in my car. Dawn was breaking as I drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw the condemned laundromat one last time, and in the dark window of washer number 23, I saw her reflection, still watching, still waiting, still there. The laundromat was demolished 3 weeks later. I watched from a distance as the wrecking equipment tore through the building, reducing it to rubble. The machines were hauled away, the foundation dug up. They found the old asylum foundation underneath, stone and concrete from 1952, still stained with soot from the fire. The city sealed the site. Within a month, it was paved over for a parking lot. But Nurse Hartwell's presence didn't vanish with the building. I see her sometimes. Not every day, not even every week, but often enough to know she's still there, still watching, still waiting to see if I'll keep my promise. I've become hyper-aware of reflective surfaces. I scan every window before I walk past. I check every mirror before I use it. I avoid laundromats entirely now. I wash everything in my bathtub, hang it to dry in my bathroom, don't care how inconvenient or time-consuming it is. My roommate thinks I've developed OCD. She's noticed the covered mirrors, the way I turn my phone face down, how I won't walk near the windows of closed businesses at night. I got a new job, a better one. Remote data entry, $14 an hour. It's enough, barely. But it means I don't have to go out at night, don't have to risk seeing her. Most nights are okay. I work my shift from home, I eat cheap meals, I sleep fitfully on the couch, I'm alive, I'm surviving. But sometimes, late at night, I hear it. The sound of a dryer running. Distant, muffled, like it's coming from inside the walls. And I remember what she said. If you fail, if people forget what happened here, I'll find you. So I'm writing this down, documenting everything. Every detail of the laundromat, the rules, Nurse Hartwell, the patients, the cycle. I'm making sure the story is told, is remembered, is witnessed. Because I bargained for my life with a promise. And I have to keep it. Last week I passed a 24-hour laundromat on my way to the grocery store. I didn't go in, just glanced through the window as I walked past. In the reflection, I saw her. Nurse Hartwell standing inside the laundromat, her red coat pristine, her smile wide. She was watching a customer, a tired-looking woman loading washers late at night, desperate for clean clothes, not knowing what stood behind her. And I realized she's not bound to one location anymore. She's not trapped in the cycle I broke. She's free to move, to find new places, new victims, new cycles to maintain. Breaking the cycle at that one laundromat didn't end her. It just relocated her. And I'm marked as her witness, cursed to see her wherever she goes, unable to warn anyone because who would believe me? Sometimes I wonder if I should have let her claim me. It would have been faster. Kinder, maybe, than this slow torture of knowing she's out there, watching me, waiting for me to fail. But I can't give up. I made a promise. And maybe by writing this down, by telling this story, I'm doing something more than just keeping myself alive. Maybe I'm warning others. Maybe someone will read this and understand. If you see rules posted in a 24-hour laundromat, follow them exactly. Everyone. No exceptions. Don't acknowledge the woman in the red coat. Don't open the self-starting machines. Don't use the broken dryers. Don't interfere with customers approaching forbidden areas. Because the rules exist for a reason. They're not pranks or urban legends. They're boundaries between the living and the dead, between the present and trapped past. And if you break them, you'll be marked. You'll see her in every reflection, and she'll wait for you, patient as suffering, eternal as cruelty, just like she waits for me. I don't do laundry at laundromats anymore. I avoid them entirely. But yesterday, I needed quarters for the parking meter, and the only place to get change was a coin laundry on the corner. I stood outside for 10 minutes trying to convince myself it would be fine. Quick in, quick out. Just change for the machine at the counter. The door was glass. Through it I could see the rows of washers and dryers, the fluorescent lights, the tired attendant behind the counter. And in the reflection on the glass, I saw her. Nurse Hartwell standing just behind me, close enough to touch. I didn't turn around. I knew she wouldn't be there if I looked directly. But I heard her voice, that layered chorus. Tell my story, Maya, keep telling it, or I'll add you to the cycle. I walked away without getting my quarters, got a parking ticket instead, $50, worth every penny to not go inside. Tonight I'm writing this final entry. I'll post it online, share it on forums, send it to creepypasta sites, make sure it spreads. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to witness. Because if this story reaches enough people, if enough witnesses carry her memory, maybe I'll have fulfilled my promise. Maybe she'll leave me alone. Or maybe she'll come anyway. Maybe that was always the plan. Maybe I'm just buying time, postponing the inevitable moment when I let my guard down. And she's there, and I join Danny and Marcus and all the others in the cycle. I don't know anymore. What I know is this. If you're reading this, you're a witness now too. You carry part of her story, part of the burden, and if you ever see a woman in a red coat standing in a reflection where no one should be, smiling too wide, her neck rotating impossibly, don't acknowledge her. Don't look directly at her. Don't interfere, just walk away. And whatever you do, don't do your laundry at night. 3 months after I wrote everything down, after I posted the story online and shared it across forums and subreddits, something changed. I stopped seeing her. Not completely, not forever, but the reflections became less frequent. The 3:13 a.m. dryer sounds faded. The feeling of being constantly watched diminished. I thought maybe I'd done it. Maybe enough people had read the story, had become witnesses, had shared the burden. Maybe Nurse Hartwell was satisfied that her cruelty would be remembered. I started to relax, started to sleep better, started to believe I might actually survive this. Then I saw the job posting. It was late January and I was scrolling through employment listings. My remote job had ended when the company downsized. I needed work. Again, always. The posting caught my eye because of the location, Newark, New Jersey, same neighborhood, same forgotten corner where the old spin cycle had been. But this listing was for a different address, a different laundromat. Spin cycle, now hiring night attendant 18-hour, overnight shift, 10 p.m., 6 a.m., no experience necessary, immediate start available, same name, same pay, same shift, different location. I clicked on the listing. The photo showed a clean, well-lit laundromat, brand new equipment, fresh paint, modern fixtures. Nothing like the condemned building I'd worked in. But in the background of the photo, barely visible in the reflection of washer number 23's glass door, I saw a flash of red. My hands were shaking as I closed the listing. I thought about calling the business, warning them. But warn them about what? That a malevolent entity who'd maintained a torture cycle for 70 years might have relocated? That the woman in the red coat was setting up a new hunting ground? Who would believe me? I thought about going there myself, seeing if the rules were posted, if the same protocols were in place. But I couldn't. I was marked. If I went back into a laundromat, if I got too close to her territory, she might consider our bargain void. Instead, I waited. 2 weeks later, I found a post on a local forum. Weird rules at the new 24-hour laundromat. The poster had uploaded a photo of a laminated sheet taped beside a counter. I recognized the format immediately. Night shift protocol. The rules were slightly different from the ones I'd memorized. Some were the same: don't acknowledge the woman in the red coat, don't open self-starting machines. But there were new ones too. Rule number 11. If you recognize your reflection as someone else, leave immediately. Rule number 12. The change machine only gives correct change. If it gives too much, return the excess immediately. Rule number 13. Do not read the graffiti in the bathroom. It is not advice. New rules meant new phenomena, new ways the cycle was manifesting. Nurse Hartwell was adapting, evolving. The comments on the post were what I expected. People laughing, calling it an elaborate prank, urban legend nonsense. A few people said they'd applied for the night shift position because the rules made it seem interesting. One commenter wrote, "I start tomorrow night. I'll live stream and debunk the whole thing. This is obviously viral marketing." My stomach dropped. Another Danny, another skeptic who thought they could prove the rules were fake. I created a throwaway account and replied, "Please don't. Please take the rules seriously. Follow them exactly. This isn't a joke." The responses came quickly. "Okay, Karen. Imagine being scared of a laundromat. The new hire is going to prove this is all bullshit." I tried to warn them. I tried to explain. But the more I insisted, the more they dismissed me as part of the marketing campaign or a method actor playing along with the story. I stopped checking the forum. I couldn't watch another person walk into danger I couldn't prevent. Last week I saw a news article. Woman found catatonic at Newark laundromat, cause unknown. The article was brief. A young woman, 26, had been found unresponsive at Spin Cycle laundromat. Paramedics reported she was breathing but non-responsive with a small amount of blood from her nose. Security footage showed nothing unusual. She'd simply collapsed. The laundromat temporarily closed for investigation. I knew what had happened. The skeptic live streamer, the one who'd wanted to debunk the rules. She'd acknowledged the woman in the red coat. And now she was wherever Danny was, wherever Marcus was, wherever all the marked ones go when they're finally claimed. The laundromat reopened 3 days later. With a new job posting, night attendant needed, 18-hour, immediate start. The cycle continues. Nurse Hartwell has found a new location, new victims, new witnesses to her eternal cruelty. And I'm still marked, still seeing her in reflections, still hearing dryers in my walls some nights. But I've learned something important. I can't stop her. I can't warn everyone. I can't prevent the cycle. All I can do is tell the story. Be a witness, carry the memory, so if you're reading this, you're a witness now too. And if you ever need a job, if you're desperate and broke, if you see a posting for overnight work at a 24-hour laundromat, read the rules carefully, follow them exactly. Don't think you're clever enough to test them. Don't think you're brave enough to break them. Just survive your shift and collect your pay. Because the woman in the red coat is patient. She's been maintaining her cycles for 70+ years. She'll be there long after we're all gone. And she's always hiring, always watching, always waiting for someone to make a mistake. Don't let it be you.